So in the previous part of this lecture, we looked at Ajax utils.js, which is a small library we wrote in order to make Ajax requests to the server and process the response at least somewhat by being able to give our user, the user of our library that is, and in this case it's just us, the user of our library, to be able to give him the ability to give us a function that he'll be able to pass to us and will then get called when the server returns the response. So right now I'm located in script.js, which is located in lecture 57 folder. So let's go ahead and close the file explorer of Sublime Text and let's take a look at our script.js. Again, just as a very tiny review, ajaxutils.js is where we're defining our Ajax utils object, to which we have one thing attached, which is send request. And again, send request is expecting a request URL, and it's also expecting a response handler function. So we're passing in a value of the function and a request URL. So let's go ahead and go to our script.js and see what we're doing here. The first thing we're doing is we're adding an event listener for DOM content loaded. So which means this only going to execute when the page has loaded all the HTML content but hasn't yet loaded all the CSS or pictures and so on. Well, we don't really have any pictures, so either way. And then what we're doing is if we take a look at our HTML, we have this button right here, and that's the only button in the entire HTML. What we're doing is we're unobtrusively attaching an event binding to that button. So we're doing document.querySelector and we're saying the button, and that's the only button in the document, so therefore that's the only one should get returned. And we're adding an event listener, we're adding a click event listener. So when the user clicks that button, we want this function right here to get executed. So let's say what we're doing here. Well, first of all, we're setting var self equals this, and we've seen this before. So, and I'm setting up a name. At this point, just going to be an empty string. And then I'm using our Ajax utils to call the server to get that name. So I'm saying Ajax utils, remember we set it to with a $sign. Let's take a look at it. We bound the $sign global.$sign Ajax utils to our Ajax util object. So the Ajax utils dot send get request, and we're providing it the URL. So we're giving it the URL of /data/name.txt, and it wants a handler function. Remember the response handler function that takes a request object that's going to have in it our response from the server. Yeah, it's a little bit weird in JavaScript that the response object is still called the request, but it is, so we're just going to continue doing it. So the function is, again, we're defining it inline. We're not providing a function value, but it's an inline function expression. And we're saying that this name right here should be returned self.name. That's the name right here. And we want the request.response text. So request.response text, or the response text property of the request object, is what holds the response from the server. So we want to save that response straight inside self.name. Once we called the Ajax utils and sent this request, now that the name is set, we're doing a query selector on the content. And remember, the content in index.html is just this empty div placeholder. So we're calling this content, and we're using the ID of that content. And we're saying that inner HTML should be h2hello plus self.name, that's that name right here, plus the exclamation point. So it should say hello and Yakov Chaikin at the end. So let's go ahead and save that. And let's go to our page and open up our Chrome Developer Tools so we could see the console just in case. And let's go ahead and click this button and see what happens. Not quite what we expected, right? It says hello and there's nothing there. Well, let's verify that the server communication worked. Let's go ahead and print out the self. Let's do a console.log and let's print out self.name to make sure that self.name actually contains the words Yakov Chaikin. Let's save that. Let's go here and we'll say hello again. And as you can see, Yakov Chaikin is returned. So what's going on? Why isn't this outputting hello Yakov Chaikin? Can you tell what we did wrong? Well, what we did wrong was forget that this is an asynchronous call. So what's really going on is when we're executing this call right here, send request, it goes ahead and executes this call, and it immediately returns and goes and executes the second line right here. Remember that visual from the previous lecture that I showed you? When the Ajax call gets made to the server, the very next JavaScript line gets immediately executed. It is not going to wait for the server to respond before it executes this next line. And that's because this call is asynchronous. So what do we do in this type of case? Well, what we do is we actually have to put all the functionality that is functionality that's based on the response from the server inside of our response handler. So we really have to take this whole line out of here, cut it out, and we'll go ahead and erase our console, and we'll put it right here. And that's the whole line is going to have to be right here. And in this case, we don't really need self anymore, do we? We don't really need to have kind of a global or outside of this lexical scope name. We can erase all this, and we would just do var in here and say var name equals request.response text. And then when we're just doing a query selector, we don't even need self here either. In fact, let's see if it actually fits on the next line, and it does. So we're just saying hello, name, exclamation point. And that's really all that our function or response handler function is supposed to do. So let's go ahead and save that. And now when we go to our browser and click hello, we actually get hello Yaakov Chaikin. And this string Yaakov Chaikin is coming now from the server. So we made the full round circle from setting up the Ajax utils to making a call to it, and remembering that it is an asynchronous call, so if we're expecting something from it, we really can't do this after the call. We need to do everything to handle that response inside our callback function, which is what this handler callback was about.